in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hello, 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 and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Welcome to my channel. This is Ike Ogiamian's channel. Over here, we talk about being better and doing better with a strong emphasis on doing. And as you may gather from the title today, we're going to be talking about the higher things, whatever that is. And we will, or what I hope to do today, is to have a dialogue with Dr. Thunder. We want to make it Socratic. We want to talk around the issue. We want to make it a discussion because we're not going to present to you some kind of dissertation or theory of what the higher things are vis-a-vis the lower things and whatnot. We wanted to, right? Am I right there, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't actually answer any questions.
We don't answer. Okay, excellent. So let me give a brief background as to where this conversation started, okay? Where this conversation started. And you know what, before I get there, let me ask you this, because that'll give us an inkling to, why do you think I have the word simp in the title? Recall, we're talking about the higher things and the lower things and how the lower things might obscure the higher things. And why do you think I have the word simp there? Any thoughts, Dr. Thunder? Because it is your thing. It is your favorite word.
Yeah, right. Is it this?
Oh, okay. American Simp Society. What is that? Is that a shirt? Is that a shirt you're selling? You got
No.
merch?
Yeah, you can actually go on Amazon, free plug for them, and get your American Simp Society or ASS t-shirt.
ASS t-shirt. Now, okay. Let me give some background, and then you'll know. It'll be clear to you, Dr. Thunder, and you're like, oh, well, duh, of course. So basically, in our conversations about getting ish done, we have stumbled upon several things that'll stop you, that'll hinder you from getting things done. And one of them, or a particular group of them, a class of these things that'll stop you are the sins, right? The 7 deadly sins. And they take the shape of the lower things obscuring you from the pursuit of the higher things, whether it be the pursuit of lust or greed or whatever it may be. In other words, the sin, greed, is not just wanting better for yourself, but it is when it takes the form of you going low and sacrificing the higher things. And is it not your thing, Dr. Thunder, to call simping basically that simping basically is a sacrifice of the low, of the higher things to the lower? Basically somebody
Absolutely.
who is okay. So you so it's not a stretch, right?
No, it's not a stretch. In simping is, in my sort of view, an aspect of it, because that it's a pretty broad term, is when you prioritize pleasure over purpose. Because when you prioritize pleasure over purpose, there's a lot of subjecting yourself, subjugating yourself, deprecation, self-deprecation, doing whatever necessary just to get, just to get, get some validation, to get that pat on the head, to get that urge satisfied, whatever, at the expense of your destiny. I don't mean to sound, abstract and ethereal and all of that, but it seems that destiny is worth is worth preserving, at least the potential in that destiny. I mean, we're all going to end up somewhere. So ending up in a better place, and I'm not even talking heaven or hell here. I'm talking with your family taken care of, with a legacy firmly established. Shout out to King Ike, with a kingdom established. So, yeah.
All right. So in our conversations about the lower stuff and how it'll block you from getting to the higher stuff, we kept on just referring to the higher stuff, and we did not say exactly what it was. Like, we're just like, okay, when you, shout out to Alpha Male Strategies, be on your purpose, be on your purpose, be on your purpose. Don't allow these lower things to block you, okay? And there are, let's begin like this, okay? Let's begin like this. When the higher things come to mind, there are certain concepts that come to mind for me, and I'm going to ask you this question. Like, when it's reaching for the higher things, what comes to your mind, Dr. Thunder? But for me, one thing is, that we're talking about priorities. We're talking about hierarchy, and we're talking about perhaps a nested set of hierarchies. What do I mean by that? You like to talk about, Dr. Thunder, the fact that when you're walking, okay, you're not just walking for it. You're rarely ever taking a casual stroll, okay, right? So you're rarely ever taking a casual stroll. So when you're walking and I ask you why, you're like, well, I'm walking to class. Well, why? Well, because I would like to get this degree. Well, why? Well, because I think that the degree will help me get X, Y, and Z. Well, why get X, Y, and Z? Well, because I think I'm on this planet. My destiny is for the betterment of myself, my family, and for the whole of humanity. So it starts to get bigger and bigger, whereby the small things, such as putting one foot in front of the other, right? Putting one foot in front of the other is aligned with some higher goal, such as the betterment of humanity, the betterment of yourself, your future self, your past self, your future generations, and the whole of humanity as a whole, right? So the whole idea of nesting hierarchies or nesting values, whereby there's the highest, because one could continue to ask you why, right? I can say, well, why? Why is humanity worth saving? Why? Then we get into the realm of values and ethics more abstractly. The further out we go there, okay? One could say this conversation really is about God, but that's the furthest out you can go, right? And then at that point, people usually don't know what you're talking about. So let's take it a step back, right? Let's take it a step back. So, what comes to mind for you, Dr. Thunder, when we talk about this concept of reaching for the higher things, right? And all I've just said is that for me, hierarchy, priority, order, and also specifically the concept of nesting these values in each other such that you are walking in order to fulfill your trans-temporal destiny for the rest of human generations, right? You're not just walking to walk. What comes to mind when we talk about reaching for the higher things, Dr. Thunder?
One of them is logical consistency, a coherence. Like one of the things that, and all of us at some level are guilty of this, but one of the things that universally turns everyone off is hypocrisy. So you may not be the best at what you do, but at least you can try to not be a hypocrite. You know, I mean, so consistency, internal consistency, the idea of addressing your own issues prior to seeking to address the issues of others. You know,
Okay. So you went to logos real quick. I mean, it is kind of implied in the word in the beginning. Okay. It's kind of implied after all in what I said, right? If you're going to have hierarchy and you're going to have priorities and then they're going to be ordered, then there's going to
right,
be some logic to it. There's going to be some
right.
order to it. It's not just
Mhm.
all over the place, right? So when we're talking about the higher things have order, they have a logos, they have an internal consistency at least to them.
Yes.
So we're beginning to lay down the groundwork here, ladies and gentlemen, of what these higher things are that one should be reaching for, what this purpose that people are talking about that will perhaps be the cure of the listlessness and the, shall we say, meaning crisis that is plaguing people, mainly men, because it is men that have to go out there and through logos figure out their purpose, right? Not that women don't have to do that too, but I like to say that women have a lot of biological help, right? They kind of have they have a biological clock. They have these urges towards doing things, okay, and a man could be completely lost, right, in that regard. And what I mean by that is not just biological. What I mean is there is a sociological, a cultural reinforcement, a social reinforcement of a woman's purpose, right? That, okay, this is what you're here to do. You have reached puberty, XYZ, so on and so forth. Motherhood, this, that, and the other. But for a man, it's a little bit like, okay, cool. Well, you show me what be on your purpose, be a protector and provider, make yourself useful. And you could be like, well, what? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay. So far, we are beginning to see the idea of consistency, logic, and hierarchy being key to this idea of the higher things. And again, you can keep on asking why and why and why, and you get all the way to God, which, by the way, doesn't necessarily help the conversation. It's more of the closing of the book on the conversation when you get there. So we're stepping back from there so we can actually know what we're talking about. And as I said, it's going to be a Socratic conversation. So, you know what? Let me go ahead and pull in K Polymath in here.
Yes.
I think we've given it enough of a, hey, K Polymath, you want to go ahead and check your microphone?
Microphone check. Microphone check. Mess up.
All
Big
right.
Ike, you might end up in a Deca.
Okay. All right. Cool. So
How
you have
did
to
I
come in
know?
your
How
with
did I
your
know
lame
that was going
freestyle.
to? Yeah. How did I know that microphone check was going to be literally microphone check? Microphone check. Okay.
You're stuck in the higher plane. You know how these ethereal things happen. The intuition to see or hear what will be is it's all in your mind.
So,
Right.
K
I'm a
Polymath,
telepath.
what do you think about what we've said so far? Okay. We said that, hey, when we were talking about the lower things, we were talking about the things such as avarice, greed, gluttony, and lust. We have had the conversations about these things taking the shape of basically the lower things subordinating the higher things, such as like turning the hierarchy on its head. And we seem to understand that when we say that kind of stuff. We seem to think
Hierarchy.
that we know what we mean, right? And then we started saying, well, what comes to mind with the higher things? And
Yeah.
logos so far has been brought up. What do you have to say in reaction to that, and also any additions when it comes? What are these higher things that we're talking about? Keep Polymath.
Yeah, usually I like to be contrived. To understand the higher things, we need to know what the lower things are. So, as you mentioned, there's a big head and there's a small head. So, the lower things are literally where your small head is. That's the things that are a lot more biological. Perhaps they're a lot more they're a little more simply defined, and they're also a little bit more real in some ways because you have to do them. These are your biological imperatives. These are certain actions which you almost can't deny yourself too much access to them, or they will lead you towards a wrong path. The higher things are the opposite. Higher things are the things that, you know, if you put your mind to, your big head to, you're going to be able to actually reap benefits from it passively in your life. What are they? Okay. An example is virtues. Your virtue, like who you are, what you do, what you constrain yourself to be, what you allow yourself to be. An example is, let's say, you're a person that has the virtue of being kind. The higher thing in this case is for you to actually attain kindness. And kindness in this case wouldn't just be to people you know or your friends or your family, but to people in general. And that's now why you start to live in the higher self. And of course, as the virtue of the universe goes, we understand things like karma. Karma has a point to it. And the point of karma is actually if you do live according to the truth of these virtues that you espouse yourself to, living, you're going to expose yourself to the goodness of the universe and the return, Newtonian energy. If you look at one of these laws, is energies created, not destroyed, but it's always conserved. Meaning, if you're truly a kind person, kindness will come back to you. But if you're the person who sells yourself to be kind, but you're only kind to people who share familial similarities to, then you're going to get these contradictions where you don't seem to quite get that karmic energy coming back into your area.
So I like that, shall we say, juxtaposition that you did, because it is easy for us to understand the lower things. The first thing that you said is that, first of all, before we get to the higher things, we want to get to the lower things. And that's one thing that I wanted to kind of talk about in a second here. But let's say, for example, Sam Harris wrote that book called The Moral Landscape, of which one of the things that he tried to do there was to kind of create an objective morality, right? In his own way. And one of the things that he said, well, we can all agree on is where the depths of hell is, where the depths of what we don't want, where the depths of the low are. And if we can start to mark those, and we call those low grounds in the moral landscape, then we can start to, at least we know which direction is up, right? Am I making sense in the chat out there? Shozan, Leroy, Digital Nomad, shout out to you guys. Make sure you guys hit the like, by the way. And yes, the super chats still work. We appreciate those. Okay, we appreciate those. Make sure you share the stream as well. Shout out to My Vivid Life in here. So is that making sense in the chat? And is it making sense, K Polymath, you brought it up anyways, and Dr. Thunder, that if we can understand the lower things, if we can at least agree on them, we might be able to point an arrow to which way is up on this landscape. That more or less is what Mr. Sam Harris starts to try to do, and chart out some moral landscape, and where there are peaks that we can see and generally agree on. So
technically, it's Dr. Harris, but
okay, sure, whatever. You freaking, you freaking PhDs in your but so you said biologically it's actually lower, right? Right there in the what do they call the root chakra is where all the lower things are. And if you let that root chakra,
Get the root chakras.
if you let the root chakra lead you,
that's right.
then you're messed up. But then if you go higher up to the crown here, then things are going to be better. But not that's not the only way in which you put it. You also mentioned the expanding out. Let's say if it's kindness, but if you're kind just to your kin and your family, again, those to which you feel something for down in your root chakra, right? Then it really isn't. Then nothing really is special about it. That you have to kind of almost abstract this thing out, temporally, trans this way, trans that way, right? Is that what
let me give
saying?
an example.
And then we'll get to Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, let me give a very simple, easy to understand thing. Is there are likable people in this world, and these people are likable not only because they they're nice to people who like them back, but they have this energy, this aura around them that actually just screams out likability. These people have sort of mastered the interface between what others see and how they see themselves, and how the interaction between internal and the external goes. There are some people, I mean, there was this girl which I met a while back. She was just so likable that I just wanted to help her. But at the same time, she was also reciprocating. So there was just energy that was actually sustained within that likability. And so if you try to understand the higher parts of this whole sphere, karma, or whatever you want to call it, but the energy of equality or equivalence actually operates in this universe, right? When Christ talks about do to others what you like them to do unto you, all these sort of golden rules and things, if you truly live in this sort of logical consistency, there's a lot of benefits within the higher, this higher plane. It's not just so woo. There really are rules to it which generally do operate.
Dr. Thunder, what you got for us?
Yeah, the karma thing is interesting. It's actually not particularly compatible with the Christian view on it. So, for instance, when the Bible says, do unto others as you'd have them to do unto you, it's not implying that you're doing that so that something good will happen to you. In fact, I mean, the human history is packed with a bunch of folks being good people and being brutally slaughtered. I knew
you were going to go there, and Leroy just said that in the chat there. He said, "Say you played by the rules and you're still at the bottom."
Right. So the karma thing. Shout out to Donovan Sharp. Karma doesn't exist. I mean, I see no evidence of karma. It's something that we say frequently, but the actual principle of karma, that things will happen good to you because you've put positive energy out in the, in the atmosphere, that somehow the energy will return to you. I see no, in all of human history, I see no evidence of that. What I tend to see is, folks that are less capable playing politics, and or exploiting whatever relationships they have to get as much power as possible. And then when they achieve that power, doing anything that they can to maintain that power, and keep that power. The thing that makes the the free market, I think, superior to any other sort of form of government, what it is that we're doing here in America, is that it actually, for the first time in history, has created an opportunity for folks that didn't have anything to be able to work their way up by taking advantage of the market. Prior to then, there was no working your way up. If you either were part of the nobility, and therefore your family and your descendants would also be a part of that, or you were a peasant, and permanently so, and your family could never elevate out of that, or such a small percentage of them would, as to be statistically insignificant. In other words, basically zero. And and I'm sorry to seem negative on this point, but but I don't see very much evidence. Well, I see none. I see no evidence of karma. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't good reasons to do good to others. That whole be the change that you want to see in the world. I think that actually is effective, but it's only effective if we're consistently, and there's that sense of consistency and not being a hypocrite, is if we are consistent and then they're in modeling certain behaviors that we want to see, and our family models those behaviors, and then our family is influential in a community, and then that community is influential, then I think if that's what's meant by karma, then I'll accept that. But of course, that's not what folks actually mean.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask K Polymath to defend himself on the whole karma point because I have a feeling you guys are gonna
That'll
get
be the
into
whole.
some
It'll be
weird.
the whole show.
It'll be the whole show, number one, and you. Let me take a shot at both you guys. Uh, okay, no, I'm gonna take a shot at you, Doctor Thunder. Uh, you're operating within that space where there's a lack of imagination, where you're okay. That's the shitty way to say it. But why are you assuming? Well, there's nothing wrong with this. Actually, you're correct. The word does exist in regular parlance, right? And the way people use it is the way you're describing, right? But I'm like, hey, come on, Doctor Thunder, that's not what we're talking about, right?
So
um,
if what we're talking about is the more
I think okay. Let me say this. Just use what was already said. Something that Mr. K Polymath said about the
Mister.
lady that was giving. Shut up, Doctor Polymath. That was giving the energy back, right? And the fact that not only was she likable, but she was also reciprocating the kindness, just made it such that hey, you know what, good things are going to be following her around, or some of the kinds of things that I tend to do, and you understand too, in terms of preparation, where you prepare and you cast your net wide and far, and therefore you're going to catch this fish. That is karma, because if you want to go to the original Sanskrit word and what it actually means you're doing. That it basically said, well, whatever happens to you is your doing, that kind of a thing. So if crappy things are happening, okay, there is a part of it that in other words, everything exists within context. You talked about the context of if you're living in a feudal society and things are of a class structure, you're not just going to break out of the class to some magical karma machine, but there are ways of you making it worse for yourself, right? By being a shitty person. And you're not going to get the benefits of being prepared, being kind, and so on and so forth. In other words, it is very mechanical when I speak of karma, or how I think of karma, not in some kind of putting stuff out in the universe way. I don't know if you have any reactions to that.
Do you subscribe to the idea of heaven on earth, or do you think that heaven is not for here?
I don't think it is. Well, one way to put it is hell is here, heaven is here. Definitely heaven is not for here, but definitely, yeah. I think perhaps I've answered the question. Yeah.
So, So I mean, there's all kinds of different perspectives on that question, but if by heaven we just mean a more enjoyable existence, one where you're more fulfilled because you're able to experience more of your your dreams, your desires. Maybe you're able to get the woman that you want. I don't know, maybe you've been simping for her for 20 years and then she's finally, she's single mother with
taking shots at boys,
3 kids. Right.
It's a fellow doctor, one of you guys.
Right. Yeah, stepdaddy season. So so maybe that's what makes you happy. But the point is that some sort of enjoyment that's a deep, fulfilling existence for you. Working, for me, for instance, working as a professor rather than working, as a post hole digger.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Kyodor for the big $50 super chat.
Yes. Definitely putting you at the sponsorship category today. And you guys check out Kyodor. He's out there. I don't know if he's on Instagram or whatever. Maybe you can put in your information because I know you are out there in business as a drafter slash modeler or in the architecture space of some kind, and definitely helping us out leads me to want to, uh, speaking of karma, right? Promote what you do. But
No, but
okay, now let's get.
yeah, but to that
Go ahead.
point, isn't there a difference between common courtesy and if it's easier to get what you want with honey than vinegar, right? So like if I smile at
Mhm.
someone, if I if I'm friendly, then I'll probably have a better experience with them because they won't see me as a threat. That
Yeah.
seems to be not related to what we're if as long as I'm understanding this
Mhm.
correctly, that doesn't seem to be related to what we are saying your definition of karma.
Mhm. Let me say something, and then we'll see what K Polymath has to say about everything that's been said. After all, he was the one that brought up the whole karma thing, right? And the whole karma thing being part of being virtuous, because somehow you brought in the good aspects. Because again, I like this because it's being Socratic, and in the very beginning of Plato's Republic, one of the things that was talked about is, well, are you good for some kind of a reason, as in some kind of an outcome, in which case, well, why don't you just seem good? How about if I just pretend to be good in order to get the outcomes? What's the difference then, and all that kind of stuff. But let me answer, Dr. Thunder, the question you're asking. Basically, there are certain things that you don't understand the mechanism by. In other words, when you are in a good state subjectively, what I mean by that, I mean, okay, you are, whether you're a post digger or you're working as a musician, but you are aligned, right, in that way where if I ask you what are you doing, you can align the fact that you're digging this post to the fact that you want to leave something better for the next generations, and because you are a Christian or something like that, where your highest goals are aligned with your basic goals. And this is going to keep you in a happy state. Okay, by happy, or I think you like to call it joy as opposed to happy, right? Because you could be having a rough time digging that post, but if you, to the degree to which it is aligned to something higher, you're going to be in a good state. And when you're in that good state, good things tend to happen. Here's the thing though, you cannot completely, and I'm answering your question, believe it or not, you cannot completely kind of align as to, well, if I do this and then this happens, I do this and then that happens, right? Common courtesy is that kind of an alignment where we know if I smile at him, he smiles back at me, I can do all that kind of stuff. But there's some kind of calculation that we don't know about, where it's like there is something about me keeping myself attuned and aligned in this way, happy in this way, which I spoke about, that tends to lead to good things in ways which I cannot calculate or
Yeah.
see. Hence, we then put some higher principle, like let's say karma, to it, because we cannot directly calculate all of it and say it was because of this. In other words, especially when there's a subjective state involved, when you're like, okay, if I am in a particular kind of state, certain good things tend to happen. Now, if you're if you practice that whole mastery of subjective consciousness thing, which is my whole thing, you tend to know why that stuff happens. In other words, you can do some more of the calculations. You know that because you are in a particular state, you are calmer, and then you make other people calmer. And then, this is just one example, right? And then they're more easily persuaded by you, right? But are we
Yeah.
going to go around to the masses explaining to them how to master feeling, image, and talk and do this kind of weird hypnosis stuff? You just tell them, hey, do karma. Just kind of be nice and be happy, and good things will happen. Does that answer your question as to why we tend to, and it's not just in this word karma, but we tend to use these kinds of principles, maxims out there as a way of encompassing a large body of, it's like a black box type calculations where most people are not capable of understanding the all the mechanisms. First, Dr. Thunder, have I addressed, am I even in the vicinity of what you're talking about? And then we'll
Yeah,
get to
yeah. I mean, you've described what it is that you mean. I don't disagree with uh, your description of how you're using that term. My fundamental disagreement is with the principle of karma itself, what it actually means. The folks that are actually adherents of the religion, that philosophy, that way of thinking that doctrine, comes out of. If you're using it more of a colloquial sense, then I'm fine with that.
All right, K Polymath, are you gonna? What do you have to say if we resolve this whole karma thing, and you willing to move on
No,
now?
now we got to do like 3 shows on just this.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I think within my point, I agree with Dr. Nunn in the sense that as karma is defined currently by most people and the history and culture around it, it's not quite accurate to use that term the way I used it. But I think I did go down to what I really meant, which is the difference between kindness of a person who's doing kindness because they're not, pushing kindness to the end versus a person that's just truly kind in all areas. It's like, we basically reduce it to very simple things. A woman that smiles is more likely or less likely to find a man. Simple question to people on the panel.
More likely.
Right. A woman who cooks for her man and doesn't complain and do all these things, more likely or less likely.
Okay, I like that you brought the statistical thing because and I'll let you continue because people have already, people already alluded to the fact that, oh yes, she smiled and she cooked and then she ended up and burned in the steak. Yes, we know. Okay, but you're talking about more likely and less likely because we know that happens, right? But anyways, go ahead.
Right. So if you, and the thing is about, I mentioned someone in the comments, was it Leroy, mentioned something like good people end up in shitty situations all the time. There's a difference between, hey, first of all, it's a statistical, right? You can't, like Dr. Thunder said, this whole principle doesn't work in an exact logical way because we're dealing with infinity, right? Chaos, meaning even you being good. And I did mention in the beginning that there is an internal state of goodness and an external state of goodness. Understanding yourself from within and also the environment around you and what that environment, the rules of engagement in that environment is. Meaning you can't just be good and then you think you're good in your own mind. Your goodness has to be reciprocated by the external environment around you. Meaning the environment has to also see you as good in that sense and useful to them. So it's more, I'm talking about it more in a Newtonian sense.
Corresponding
every
with
action,
reality.
right? Exactly. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So we can't understand all the actions and how they, manifest themselves, but we can more or less see generalities there. And if we just truly push on kindness to the end, people will be kind to you. I mean, Kyoto's out there being kind to us, giving us super chats. We feel, encouraged to be kind back to him, for example. But the useless guys in the chat,
Yeah, Aaron B never super chats. He's just out here with his big eyes and huge exclamation points and crazy faces and all that kind of stuff. Where's that some of that graphic design money that you always talking about in Bernard's show? We want to see some of it. But anyways, so I would like to at this juncture talk about this happiness thing or ask you guys because I brought up the whole happiness thing and I've associated it with the higher things. I said, and perhaps happiness is not the word, and we could clarify exactly what I mean here. But there is a certain kind of satisfaction psychologically that you get, Dr. Thunder, fulfillment, when you know that those steps you're taking, where you're walking in the campus, that those steps are directly associated to the highest good that you can think of, right? The highest purpose that you can think of. And is this not indeed is this not the answer? Shout out to Jordan Peterson, pick up your cross and go up the hill, right? That's the whole idea. What is it? Pick up your book bag and walk down the path whereby there is a hill that is a hill which is a bigger nested, shall we say, value in your hierarchy. Okay, I'm sitting here typing something on a piece of, I'm typing, right? All I'm doing is pushing keys on a keyboard. Well, why? I'm writing sentences and paragraphs. Well, why? Because I'm writing a book. Well, why? Because I think this book is going to be beneficial to X, Y, and Z. Well, why X, Y, and Z? Well, because I think that the betterment of humanity is, in other words, when you start to, you will be more fulfilled pushing those keys when you can see that far out. Okay? Now, Any reactions to that, Dr. Thunder, and then K Polymath? Is fulfillment really associated with the higher things? And how is it different from just fulfilling the lower things? How is it different from just going root chakra all the way and shooting
Right.
up the club or whatever,
Yeah, from succeeding, right? So what's the
from
difference between
succeeding?
that? Right. Oh, sorry, I stole one of your talking points, K Polymath. Sorry about that. Uh, yeah. So the fulfillment thing that's interesting because you still have to have. Oh man, is it possible to be like a serial killer? And shout out to Dexter, which is back in a new season. Is it possible to be fulfilled while you're carrying out heinous acts? You have a list, you have a goal, you have, over the next 5 years, I want to, stack up this number of bodies. And no, it's not that kind of bodies. It's the other kind of bodies. So, or say you're a 304 and you just have a goal of 150 bodies in the next 3 months. And okay, so like I'm being, obviously I'm being hyperbolic, but my point is that is it necessary for the goals to be altruistic for us to still get a certain sense of fulfillment? Now, my tendency is to say those are not equivalent. They're not the same, and you won't get the same level of fulfillment. And so maybe that's part of the answer is what does it say in the Bible? Having experienced, all of the pleasures of the world or whatever, and this everything leaves you, it's all vain. Beauty is
Vanity upon
vain.
vanity, yep.
Yeah, all of that. So, yeah.
Okay, K Polymath. I
Yeah.
think the question on the table is about this happiness, and Dr. Thunder went somewhere with it. Go ahead. Where are you going to take it?
Yeah, actually, it's going to sound controversial because of my beliefs, but that's not really relevant here. But I want to bring it back to what I said from the beginning, is that there is an internal state of you being in line with goodness or whatever virtues that you say you are with, and also an external component to it. So, for example, let's use Dexter as an example. If Dexter is content with just having his family units, right? His son, I forgot his name, but his son and someone else who's still accepting him, like having a couple of people accept him, and if he can obtain enough happiness or joyousness from that experience of just 2 or 3 people accepting him, and even if the whole world damns him, if those few people can kind of take on the burden of the cross, helping him carry that cross across life, I think he can actually live a pretty happy, fulfilled life. Acceptance, as long as he can find that acceptance, either it could be purely from within, which is quite difficult, or even if it's external, if he finds that the value of, let's say, someone accepts me for who I am, and that person's not broken at all, like there's a purity level, almost like, Christ forgiving your sins, one person dying for your sins. Almost, if he finds a God figure on the external who doesn't let him down, in a sense, right, within his limited life experience as a human with a few years, I think, honestly, he could be pretty happy and live a pretty fulfilled life.
Okay. Yes. Now, I like where both of you guys went, and I'm going to say 2 things. I've always used to think about, Hitler, for example. Hitler, let's say if Hitler was quote unquote enlightened in a particular kind of small, enlightened kind of way, which means he is completely aware. He's not kind of some kind of, oh, he was tortured, that's why he did what he did, some kind of strange, people always like to put some kind of pathology on stuff. Let's say, no, he was completely healthy and happy. Okay. And he used to wake up every day and do deep breathing exercises and was very, very acutely aware. He does my whole mastery of subjective consciousness, very well aware of his feelings, the image in his head, the talk in his head, and all that kind of stuff. Okay. He was in a Zen state the whole time. Okay. While still killing people. I don't see a contradiction there. What the contradiction, I mean, I don't think that, if you get all Zen, you're going to stop killing people. Okay. And I think that perhaps, Dr. Thunder, you might agree with that that these things at the end of the day, we're getting to the point where we're starting to see that whatever these externalities are, it's going to get to the point where it's going to be still just vanity, right? And a way of putting it without going to extremes is this: it might not be a good idea to kill people, just you being the bank teller or something. But if you're a general in a war, or if you are a freedom fighter or something like that, or if your vision is to break the corruption in the West and reforge a new society or something like that, in other words, if you're going to make an omelet, right, and there are eggs to be cracked, then your purpose is going to be you're aligning, or those steps you're going to be taking, those keys you're going to be pushing, are going to involve some chopping off some heads. And are you still not in this kind of a higher purpose plane that we're talking about? Hence, having said all this, okay, and I'll start with K Parliament and we'll go back to Dr. Thunder. Having said all this, are we not missing a component? What is the component we're missing? Or does it not matter? And do we just stop here in this semi-nihilist place and then transcend to some kind of postmodernist other place, which might be where we end up ultimately? But at least let's take our steps step by step. We're starting to see here that, okay, cool. I may have this purpose that is a big purpose that's going to involve me doing all kinds of unkind, crazy stuff. Okay, what are your reactions to that, Dr. K. Polymath first? Dr. Polymath.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, so in this world, typically people would like to put things in either a more negative or positive energy, good, evil, and you choose a side, and it's a war, one way within your mind and within the external environment. It's an interesting question here. So I think it's this: it's like most people tend to want to do good, and if you tend to want to do good, then play your cards in that goodness field. And if you want to be someone with complicated wants, requirements, and needs, for example, let's say you're a dictator who wants to go and take over the world in order to make it a better place. You may be fulfilled in your actions, even if you have to do terrible things, if you believe in yourself and the possible consequences of your actions, right? The people might want to sacrifice you, right? They might want to kill you for it, not understanding your reasoning from inside. And even if you do create things and make them better, people still hate you for very obvious reasons, for aesthetics. You didn't do it in the way they didn't understand what you did, etc. All of that stuff, right? An example is Christ was still killed and by his own people, and he suffered while trying to help them, etc. There isn't, for example, this is why maybe I really like Dr. Thunder coming in and saying karma, as people understand it, isn't necessarily how things are. You could argue and say, well, Christ did good things. Why was he sacrificed by his own people, etc.? But at the same time, if you generally stick to your principles and you have high level principles, not just principles where for example, Ned Stark in the Game of Thrones, right? People know what happened to that guy in the beginning of the show. He got his head chopped off, right? And he was more or less the best character in terms of goodness, typical understanding of goodness. But no one is telling you to be naive in this world, right? If you take the good path, you don't need to be naive. I know I'm going to confuse some people, but that whole Christian thing about turning the other cheek, or it's more or less as Jordan Peterson said. You need to be in a position where you have the power to crush someone, and you choose not to crush them. It doesn't mean that you're just a weak person that then just allows karma or this energy in the universe to come and fight for you. No, you need to be in a position that you could destroy the world, but you choose not to destroy the world.
Blessed are the merciful,
All right, Dr.
for they
Thunder.
shall be shown mercy.
All right, continue with the Beatitudes, if you will.
Sure. No, but that's what K Polymath was saying. It's showing mercy. You can only show mercy if you have the power to actually do something to somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So showing mercy. So see, I guess I'm wrong. Karma is real, because for you're going to be shown mercy because you. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna stick to my guns on this. I remember listening to Donovan Sharp, and months ago I heard him say something, and then he kind of doubled down on it when he did a short sort of impromptu video. It's when he was released from the hospital and he was starting to feel a little bit better, but he wasn't. Devin wouldn't let him get in the studio yet. So he did a 28-minute stream, and it's named something like, like what's different since now I've had the 91 DVOC or whatever. Like, does he have a different perspective? And he talks around and stuff, but at the end he says, well, if you haven't figured this out, of course nothing's different. I'm ready to double down on every hobby. It's just he. So, but in that whole in that whole thing, he goes back into this point that he's made several times about how karma doesn't exist, and his evidence for that saying that karma doesn't exist is that the dating market is all the evidence that you need to know that karma doesn't exist. The fact that the Brittany Renners of the world can rack up ungodly body counts, and somebody's going to come in and save the day. So some super simp's going to come in and wife her up in the 9th hour after when she's 60 years old.
Maybe I'm just a solipsist, but whenever I hear these principles, I always just stick to myself, as in, I know what karma is for me, and I know it works. And I would even challenge you, Dr. Thunder, that. Okay, maybe not. Even yes, let's keep it pragmatic. Let's say it works, right? Not just because I like to because it's some kind of my part of my abstract whatever.
Karma is lazy. Doesn't like to work.
I know it works. Yeah, these damn Hindis or anyways, whatever. I know. In other words, the fact that I when I look at you, we got statistical also for a moment. Then when K Polymath forced us to agree that is a woman that cooks more likely to, is a woman that smiles more likely to, and we kind of agreed, right? But at the end of the day, all that kind of stuff is just like, really, I don't care. Subjectively, I know the states that I need to be in for shit to go right in my life. I know up to about 80% how the mechanism also works, right? There's another 20% that I'm not so sure about that still is kind of like woo. Hence, I'm just going to practice the principle anyways, even if I don't understand it, right? I'm still just going to go ahead and practice it. The fact that Brittany Renner is getting wifed up by that doesn't really, it's not, I'm not saying you're wrong, Dr. Thunder. And I started this by saying I'm a solipsist in that way. Like, I really don't care how other people are, what kind of good or bad luck they're having. Like it's like it doesn't even exist for me.
Yeah, but
There's
but at some point, your thoughts and ideas, you at some point and in some ways you try to make them correspond with reality. So like, for instance, you wouldn't say that same thing that you just said about the principle of gravity. You wouldn't say, well, everyone else experiences gravity, but I don't think gravity is a real thing. You know,
So
so
perhaps
so at some level,
let me say
yeah,
something perhaps maybe even worse. Perhaps karma is not for every. Okay, karma is for the people. It's almost like karma is this special little weapon, and if you can wield it, it'll work for you. You'll be able to walk on water or whatever. But it is definitely not for the masses. Maybe that's kind of
it's your truth. I understand it's your truth.
nah. Come
Mm.
on. I said it's a
Wait. I
special
think
kind of weapon that it requires skill in order
I
to
think we're
enact.
missing.
In other words,
I think we're
I can
missing.
talk till I'm blue. Okay, go ahead.
I think we're missing something here, right? Let's say with is it something Brittany Rayner or something? We're missing the thing that we just made a few minutes ago, which is power. Beauty is power and is one of the biggest laws out there. So there are other bigger laws, right? Even gravity, there's more forces out there that have a stronger pull than gravity, right? Things which, for example, electromagnetism is a stronger force in terms of direct interaction with things than gravity is. Gravity is more of this ethereal force that governs things in the background. But there is, but if you have, for example, right now, let's say you have a piece of metal and you have a strong electromagnetic field that you've created, and let's say you could actually basically, okay, let's say you have this magnet, it's out there on the roof, and then you have some metal files on the floor. Now, obviously, gravity is to pull things down, right? But the electromagnet will pull things up if it's strong enough. So karma is like gravity. It's this more kind of the force that it governs everything, but there are forces within that system that have more direct impact in like a more direct way. So in this case, beauty in a woman is going to be higher level than some of these small concepts like being kind, smiling as much, because in a direct way, the man wants that beauty in front of him. And you see, in long-term happiness and joyousness, that man isn't going to be as happy with that woman who is uncouth, yet doesn't do all these simple things. And the man who may have chosen the woman who does all these simple things is actually going to be more fulfilled typically. So that's how I would like to put that in there.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So of course I agree that having a positive disposition and attitude in believing that you yourself are responsible for your own destiny, and therefore being positive and confident, and then the way that sort of confidence sort of, it's better to be confident, it's better to be, light spirited, when you're around folks, it's better that way, because again, it's that principle of getting more with honey than with vinegar. So of course I agree that aspect, this sort of colloquial sense that we're using for this principle of karma, I would tend to agree with that, so long as we're not making it when it starts to get mystical or too mystical or magical, then that's when I have to tap out. But if it stays as a sort of a sort of state of mind, something that you are almost altering your own consciousness with, and then therefore the potential of reaping better rewards because of the way that you've conditioned your mind, then I'm fine with it.
Okay, good. And that's where I'm at with it. And not that I think that you misunderstood me about where I was at, but this was not a conversation purely about me. It was about the whole general concept. Anyways, let me draw us back to a point here. While I don't know how much time do we have, Dr. Thunder, and we are, yeah.
I think the time is going to seem longer to you than me. So when I think we have about 30 minutes
cool.
left.
Okay, not bad. Even so, I know that we're gonna have another part of this conversation, because what is this conversation? This conversation is about the higher things. And we have not forgotten about the logos. We've not forgotten about the logical consistency that we said that was integral to all of this. Because we said the higher things is about priority, it's about a hierarchy, it is about a hierarchy of values. It's associated with with being fulfilled in the sense that if you are aligned in a forward movement towards your goals, and these goals are aligned with your, as you like to talk about it, your dream goal, and then your long-term goal, your intermediate goals, and your short-term goals, and then you literally putting one foot of the other. If all these things are aligned, there's a sense of fulfillment that comes along with it. And then that sense of fulfillment, and which is a tangible good, if you will, led us to other kinds of tangible goods, which we talked about, like, okay, if you're kind, you're going to get kindness back. And is that a good reason to do that or not? And, is that all vanity at the end of the day? And what exactly are we missing here? So let me go back to the logic part, to the consistency part, to the logos part.
Yeah.
Let's go to Cape Polymath. Is that an absolute in this questionnaire? Is that something we can hold on to? Because so far, I think that the contingencies about whether or not it's going to bring you something good or not, blah blah blah.
There are rules. See,
What did you say?
I think I've been consistent throughout this whole thing, is that there are rules that you govern your life by, right? Your own internal reasons of why you think you're being virtuous, right? A person can live their whole life thinking that they're good, but there are also rules that are universal rules of the universe. You have to somehow make sure that your own internal rules that you use to govern yourself is consistent with the external rules out there. So, for example, right, if you're going to be living life as a good person and expecting goodness back, make sure the community around you is more of an FE community, extroverted feeling. They want to actually give that back to you. You're their people, you're their person. Hey, for example, let's use our O-Man, right? O-Man goes out there, helps begin and start the manosphere, versus the other guy, what's his name? The weird contradictory guy, but he's quite smart. I forgot his name, Tommy, right? He goes around there creating chaos all over the place, not necessarily creating friends, right? O-Man gets this karmic thing back by a big guy in space going out there helping him sell thousands of books, for example, right? So if you understand the rules within the environment you're in, right? That's what I'm talking about here, is that if you can align your own principles with an environment that is also going to be, it's like in the Bible talks about sowing your seeds in the right ground. This is what we're talking about here, is you have to sow your seeds in the right grounds. And that's where what we're defining as karma here operates. So there are rules out there. You can't just go throwing seeds in tarmac and expecting it to germinate. Now, some seeds could, genetically modified, all that stuff. But in general, make sure that the environment, the external rules, the universal rules are consistent or in alignment with your own internal rules, if you want it to work for you in a more statistically preferred way.
And interesting that you mentioned FE, because I was reacting to Leroy shout out to Leroy, always over here supporting. But over the past few broadcasts, if you will, he has been noticing my solipsism, my kind of crazy individualism, and which I the FE types of the world always judge us, Dr. Thunder, do they not? And we're evil people for being a certain type of person, and that's fine. In other words, I expect that, and it's almost a sense of not believing when I say what I say. Like, I'm really all about myself. Well, how can you be a good person if you're all about yourself? Well, it's anyways, that's a sidebar, and perhaps in the next conversation we're going to talk about how these different types and the different places. In other words, I don't sow my seeds in FE culture or FE land, for example. Like, I'm not a person, by FE meaning extroverted feeling, meaning that thing whereby people have these strong bonds of feeling that are not necessarily in them. It's kind of between them. And it moves them to do things. They do things because, auntie so-and-so and uncle so-and-so will be happy, and it keeps the community and everybody smiling and eating rice. You know, I don't sow seeds there necessarily. That's not where I do my stuff. I'm strongly in FI person, which is an introverted feeling, and that's why for me, all this kind of karma stuff is like, who cares what other people are using it for? This weapon is very strong for me. When I go in there and I align myself in a certain way, boom, I can get ish done, and that's all I really care about. It doesn't mean that I hate Auntie whomever and their rice eating. It's just not where I live. But anyways, Dr.
But
Thunder,
it's not.
go ahead.
Okay, so this is okay. This will be the last thing I say about this. So
I like rice.
so two things. I don't know if you can find this comment, but Aaron B, and this is a bit ago. He puts a comment up that says, let's see here, karma doesn't exist for women, and then and then he's got a comment that says, especially thoughts. So I think there's some truth to that. I think there's some truth to that. Or maybe karma does exist for them. It depends on how he's, you know.
You want to shout out the super chat real quick before we forget about Ayo Adeo Joe in the building?
Yes. Thank you, sir, for the Canadian currency there. So where were we at? We were talking. Okay, so this will be the last thing I say on this topic. Because what you're using to say karma, the karma that you're using is not actually the actual karma. Mm-hmm. You're using that word, but sort of using it as a sort of I don't know, as a placeholder, not a placeholder, as a label, as a label for something. Yeah, but for something that's not really karma. Mm-hmm. Like would you now? It's simpler, I think, to just say karma. I get that, but to certain folks, it will probably just be confusing, because if they actually understand what karma is in the way that you're using the term, they may or may not be able to get past just the use of the term. Now, I'm past the term. I'm talking about something else now, and because I actually understand what you mean when you say that, but it also took some sort of digging to arrive at that point.
Yeah, I think
that's the last thing I'm going to say on that. But
yeah, I actually think if you go with what Dr. Thanos just said, is the American simp is the one that expects karma to work for him and getting peace leave without understanding these finer things about sowing seeds in the right way, right? He goes out there, he wants to succeed. He wants to succeed in his germination of planting seeds, but he's not succeeding, because he doesn't understand these finer things. He's just thinking, all I have to do is just be a nice person. She'll like me, right? All I have to do is these things society told me to do, and things will work out because blah, blah, blah. But he's not understanding the rules, the external rules. He's still, you have to have your own internal state and then align it, or in contradiction or in alignment with the external environment. And if you're going to, misalign it, what I mean by that is, let's say, I'm going to go and get peace leave the way I want to get peace leave, right? The external environment might say you need to be a good-looking 6'5" white Nigerian in order to get peace leave. Now, I might be a 5'2", not so good-looking guy out there. Now, I can still get peace leave if I understand these other finer things and where to sow the seeds correctly, right? That's where it goes. You have to know and respect the external environment, and then you need to go and meet the environment in a way that's going to allow you to succeed or get succeeded on.
Yeah, but as someone 5'2", your access to peace leave will be statistically
yes. Yes, but I don't want to brag out here. But I get enough enough
That's why
expertise now.
that's why you got a PhD. I guess you had to overcompensate over there.
Pretty huge degree, yeah. See, that's how I've got pretty huge something else over here to compensate.
Wow, this guy. Oh, okay. We're
It
gonna
always
pull
has
out
to go there.
measuring.
That's that's right. That's the whole point. See, we're talking about the higher things, and the most important thing emerged.
I
It's
mean,
really what it was all about, huh? Started out talking about the logos and hierarchy and aligning yourself, and all of a
Man, we
sudden
should have just started with that. What are we doing?
we should have just.
did you say
What are your
Let's start
measurements?
with it, man.
Be like a
Align
2-minute stream.
That's right. I could be up watching
2-minute
True
man?
Blood or something. Dexter. That's right. I'm gonna gotta dial back into that.
Mhm.
So I did want to ask you about this. So you have a lyric in your song that is the sort of theme song for your show, for your platform. What is it? Let's see here. Because the peace that is bestowed to the meek is overrated.
Yes.
So
Because
you're
the peace that is
obviously it's a
bestowed
play.
upon the meek. Yep.
Yeah. Now it's obviously a play on "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." It's obviously a play on that. So, what do you mean by that?
Okay. There's obviously a feeling aspect of it, which is the feeling of braggadociousness and, shall we say,
Pomposity.
pomposity and not being irreverence, right?
Right.
There's a shocking aspect to it there. Like, you see, it got your attention, right? But also, I think that when it gets your attention, it then gets you to think more clearly about that thing about being meek, right? In the sense that, well, am I using this whole meekness excuse, right? What have I been getting out of being meek, right? What is my understanding of meekness? I know Jordan Peterson likes to talk about no, it's not really being lame. It's not really being a lame simp out there thinking that, oh, if I'm just exactly what K Polymath said, right? Thinking, oh, the karma is just gonna come to me if I just do the things, and if I just do the and then grovel at everyone's feet, things are gonna happen. And if you're being at peace in that kind of a state, I don't want nothing to do with that kind of peace. I don't want anything to do with the kind of peace that comes from just being lame and laying on the floor, not doing anything, not challenging yourself, not being scared, not pushing boundaries, right? I don't want any of that, right? So it's, and previous lyrics to the song are like, let's go get it, let's go do something.
It wouldn't be peace for you at all, right?
It would not be peace for me at all.
Right.
Wait, say it wouldn't be peace or peace leave.
Look, man. Look, I'm telling
so
you.
Predictable.
Look, wait a minute. This was like what was this, like 3 weeks ago or something? And I can't remember what the reference was, but I started off by saying something about what is it? What do we want from our women? We want peace and peace sleeve. And I think I said after that, I think that's the kind of thing that K Polymath would say.
Leroy made an interesting comment, and so is white privilege karma. Yes, 100%. In the way that we've described it, white privilege is more the FE thing. It's in the sense that there's a culture that exists. White is a majority in that culture. It's also seen as the expected or accepted norm. So they're going to generally help each other because they're going to be in access to similar environments, closed off, The higher people who already have succeeded tend to be white. And if you're also within some of that spaces, Christian, white, or, put all those things together, or Jew space, yes, it's going to propel you more forward. If you also kind of operate within, other things, maybe you need to be intelligent if you're going to be more into the certain fields. But yeah, white privilege is an example of an aspect of what we're talking about here in that extroverted feeling narrative. If you fit into a particular environment and you can use it to your leverage, if those people are, if you fit into it.
I interviewed Dr. Joanna Devaney, who is a professor at Brooklyn College, and she worked at the institution that I work at. That's actually how we met in the past, and then she moved on to. So anyhow, that interview went up this morning, and something that we talked about. I lost my thought. Wait a minute. Say the last thing you said again, K. Polymath.
Yeah, so white privilege is more or less.
Okay. Right. I remember now. So, see, the thing is that we're never going to get rid of tribalism. Okay, tribalism is a fact. It's evolutionary. That's what people do, and there's nothing wrong with tribalism. Okay, but the challenge is when you're working in particular institutions, and our conversation was about academia. It was about navigating the the politics and pitfalls of academia. When you're in a particular environment, tribalism is still going to have an impact in that environment, in that system, or whatever. So what you have to do is you have to find strategies to exploit the tribalism. So if you know that it's going to be the tendency for people to migrate towards other people that look like them, if you're having trouble, for instance, recruiting students that are of a certain hue, then what you have to do is you have to be more assertive, more aggressive about creating that different hue in the faculty. Because it's always very easy and totally organic. I've never had any issues, recruiting Black students. Never. Right? And it makes sense that I haven't. But you have to do that in a global sense. And then you can exploit that thing that K. Polymath, the question, what this question is talking about. You can exploit the principle that runs that thing for what it is that you want to accomplish with it. If that made sense.
Yeah, made sense. I think we've got a little bit deeper. Yeah.
Is that some kind of joke? Anyways, ladies.
Well, given the overall tenor of how we have distilled and boiled everything down to, certain body parts, apparently.
Okay. K. Polymath, let me ask you to do something which I typically do, right? What exactly have we agreed upon in this conversation? What exactly can we clearly say that has been clarified? Or even if we didn't agree upon it, what are the gates that we passed through at least to get to this point? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so first, I think we agree that the American simp is one that goes through the culturally understood narrative of what a karma is and expect things to sort of flow in a certain way, the thought to be somehow not preferred, even though he himself wants the thought too, right? He doesn't want that 4 out of 10 nice girl. He wants the thought, but he wants her to be punished because he didn't choose him. She didn't choose him. Anyways, the American simp is the guy who goes around blindly sowing seed everywhere and expecting to get a germinated fruit. So that's where we agree that karmic understanding is flawed. Then you have what we've decided to still call karma, although, perhaps there's a better term for it, is you have to be understanding of your environment. Your environment matters, so does your all internal sensitivity, clarity, and all the mastering of subjective consciousness matters. Is that you go and you find a nice ground if you want your plant to grow. You go and grow it there, and then you germinate, and you understand the rules of the environment. If it is a orange tree, perhaps you want to put it in a climate like Egypt instead of Alaska, right? It's still not just the ground. You've got to find the ground that is also going to be allowing that tree to grow the best. So if you're an FE person, like Game Changer, perhaps you want to be in an environment of FE people out there. If you're more of an FI person, like Ike, you might want to go and interact with FI-esque people, because that's one way you're going to be able to get the best out of the environment. So I think what we've agreed on is that Newtonian physics does more or less work here. And I think that's what we can kind of use, perhaps instead, more than just a general karma. Is it's not just energy, right? The energy has to be directed, right? It has to be directed and equivalent, right?
What are your reactions? Okay.
Yeah. I like that approach to. I mean, I think that provides a certain clarity that appeals to me. So.
Gotcha. So one thing that you mentioned earlier on K Polymath was virtues, which if we're sticking with virtue ethics or Aristotelian type of virtue, which is just something being good for what it is supposed to be good for, that's one thing. But would you say that unity is a virtue? I'm pointing towards something, so maybe you can see what I'm pointing towards here, because unity typically is not just typically seen as a virtue, but there is a certain kind of I'm talking about FE stuff, that whole kind of community, if you will, and the fostering of community. Is that a virtue? And where does it play?
Yeah.
Where does it lie in the higher things hierarchy, if you will?
I mean, we like to ignore it, especially, and this is where I want to come for you, Ike and Sam Harris. I think me and Dr. Thunder are more on the line in this one, is that the environment has already been paved by those who came before us, right? The Christ already died so that, we can live a more free life, right? You guys you and Dr. Harris are sort of living in a world that has already been created by Judeo-Christian ethics and the group and community coming together to create this. And you're navigating around the space, but not really acknowledging that aspect. I think the community is extremely important. I don't necessarily take part in it too much, but I am an FE person. I do value that kind of, because I know what it really is. And I think it is virtuous. We wouldn't have survived as a species if we didn't have that ability to kind of recognize our own. Yes, it in its vice, it becomes abject tribalism, of course, but in its instance, it allows you to connect, build, and even the space, the manosphere, so-called. That is what it is. It's the FE stuff, right? It's what allows us to communicate right now in this conversation.
100%. Even though I will completely push back against you with this whole kind of I don't acknowledge crap. It's almost like saying, oh, you like port. You should really acknowledge that port comes from this particular kind of grape. And it's like, dude, it's what I like to drink. It has nothing to do with, some kind of like, what do you mean I don't acknowledge it? And another thing is,
and my favorite port is Port Harcourt in Nigeria.
Oh my goodness. Anyways, and anyone who knows me knows that when it comes to, let me not put it that way. Doesn't really matter. Dr. Thunder, when it comes to unity and community and that kind of stuff, where does that play in this kind of virtue and the hierarchy landscape of the higher things? How high is it in your view?
So it's interesting. This also is what I'm going to say is related to a conversation also I had with Joanna Devaney. So we I was explaining to her that the formation of the university, sometimes also called college, but it's the same system. It's the same concept. It's the same mission, original mission, unity in diversity. That's where we get the term university, unity in diversity. It's only the unity that makes the diversity worth anything, right? You have to be in agreement about something, or else otherwise you're just everybody's running in separate directions and it's all a madhouse, right? So unity and diversity, it's one of the reasons why it always like kind of doesn't make any sense. Well, diversity is our strength. No, diversity is not a strength. Diversity can be utilized only if unity is incorporated. So in itself, diversity is nothing at all. It doesn't do anything. Now, one of the sort of downsides, though the university system was designed to foster interesting dialogues between folks that are of diverse skills, diverse disciplines, diverse perspectives, diverse opinions, diverse, personalities, diverse, though it was supposed to be a place to put folks together and say, okay, now let's figure out what is the thing that unites these things. What's the thing that is in common? What's that thread that we can thread through all of this stuff? That was the original reason for the university. But now stuff is so segregated and siloed that you actually need terms like interdisciplinary within a university. Now talk about redundant. If the mission is unity and diversity, why do you need interdisciplinary? Why do you need that term? Why do you need that initiative? Why do you need money to be spent there? So the community thing, that's we're all sort of talking about. It's kind of, we're still kind of talking about the same thing. It's the stuff that's in common. It's the stuff that you're all pulling for together. You've already made the decision on the things that you're in line with, and now you're moving in a particular direction with that stuff. So anyhow, there you go.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Community.
Okay, so when it comes to the whole community thing, so number one, after pushing back against you, K Polymath, I would also acknowledge what you said to be true, which is, if there's a weak spot, if there is a blind spot of mine, and it's a blind spot, in other words, it's never going to change, right? A truck has a blind spot, it's blind spot forever, right? So I acknowledge my blind spot being that whole community thing. However, I'm going to do some bragging here. I know some very community people who talk and acknowledge community a lot, but in actual practice, they don't have anywhere near the kind of communities or various groups of communities that I've developed over the years, right? Whether it be the community in the engineering sphere, my community in the music sphere, community in the manosphere, community all over the place. For this kind of weird introverted guy, solipsistic, blah blah blah, that I kind of come across as, it is kind of crazy how much community I actually do have. I just don't drink from that well. You know what I mean? I don't speak that way. And as a matter of fact, what I would say is, the reason I'm in part of these I get embraced by these communities, because I'm not going to say that I'm the one that's fostering them or keeping them alive or anything. I get embraced by these communities for just being that way, what I am. And I don't spit in their faces or do anything bad, back to them, right? So I don't know if that's an adequate pushback to you, K Polymath, about the whole acknowledgement of community thing, is that I go around fostering a whole bunch of communities way more than the people who focus more on communities. And because one thing about those people who tend to focus a lot on community is there's a lot of discord in them. And they tend to create a lot of discord. Okay. The guy who's always going from cubicle to cubicle to cubicle, saying hi to everybody, tends to get into arguments with people and tends to now form this group against, what Sally from accounting said about me. I'm like, I'm cool with Sally, right? I'm cool with Sally, and I'm cool with the other person you're beefing with, right? And Dr. Thunder, you may know this too, but what I'm going to say, let's say we take this space on YouTube, for example. People are always, there's all these mini beefs going on, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
you, Dr. Thunder, are like, well, I'm cool with this person, and I'm cool with that person, and I'm cool with this person. But the community people, they always have the cliques, right? They're always like, oh, this is this, and that person, I don't, this one. And I'm just like, for me, I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I deal with
Yeah,
people.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny. We were and we didn't actually end up talking about this on our Case Closed show, but like before the show started, it seemed to me that we may actually end up bringing up some of the like Brittany Renner stuff and whatever. And there's so many folks that are like so ticked off because Kevin sat down with Brittany, but it's like they're not thinking of this in the context that he is. I mean, his core values have not changed. And the thing is that I'd be the worst person to object with him doing that. I shouldn't be talking to any of you. I'm an academic, right? So I shouldn't be talking to any of you. So the idea that you can't sit down and talk to people that are of different opinions and that totally are opposed to your lifestyle or anything, whatever it is, the idea that you can't sit down and have a conversation. I mean, I have my interview series, Conversations with Dr. Thunder, and I've interviewed many folks from the manosphere that are at odds with each other. I interviewed the Angry Man. I know there's folks that don't dig him. I dig him. I like a lot of what he has to say, but I interviewed him. I interviewed Donovan. I've also interviewed O'Shea. Those guys don't like each other, but that's not my deal because that's not a priority to me. And I totally agree with that idea about developing communities, not really being not feeding from those communities, but being a person that develops communities. And that's what my content is all about. I'm trying to bring a whole lot of different kinds of folks together to have like meaningful conversations. And we're not going to agree on everything, and that's okay.
I think I want to tie in what everyone is saying here. So I think actually community is exactly as what you guys have stated. But I actually think that Dr. Thunder, you and Ike are not the community type, because community is common, unity. And as you said, university is universal diversity. So I think both of you are university type. Universal diversity or unified diversity, in the sense that you guys want to unify the differences and then find that common ground, while the community is more kind of enclosed. And
gotcha. So community really is about discord and arguing about and trying to create discord between Sally and the other person.
Right.
Okay,
it's a common unity, and then the other one is unified diversity. You want to unify the diversity. I wasn't going to disparage them
like that, generally speaking, but I do notice that, yes, that but yeah, you're all right. I do tend to be even ever since high school, right? I always, this is not stuff that you do consciously, right? It's about the personality. So you're like, I'm going to be in this clique and this clique and this clique. I'm not really in the clique, right? I'm just kind of accepted by them, right? I'm going to be over here with the bad boys and the jocks and the lames and this and that. University, I wanted to know the ABCs, the American-born Chinese, as they call them. And I also wanted to know FOBs. I wanted to also be with the black guys and the nerds and this and that, the other.
Right.
Just because it was just kind of part of the thing. And again, I wasn't necessarily in the cliques, because if I was really in the cliques, then I would be one of these kind of community people who was kind of like close the ranks and do all that kind of stuff. But again, I think that I found them useful and they found me useful. Again, to my whole utilitarian and perhaps pragmatic kind of way of looking at things. But I don't know. You got anything to say about that, Dr. Thunder, before we then start to gather things up again?
Yeah. So and this is no shade to folks that are in fraternities or people that are, by choice in unions and things like that. But that's just never been stuff that I've been particularly interested in. Now, I know folks that are in fraternities, and I've collaborated with them, and I know folks in all kinds of, different settings. But I think because I'm not so like gung ho and 100% in any one particular community, I think it makes me much more able to and flexible to move about as I need to, without the sort of baggage, kind of weighing me down.
Okay. So we started out by demarcating where this conversation started from. Where did this conversation start from? This conversation started from the fact that, there are lower things such as sloth, such as greed and lust. And they tend to keep us from getting the ish done, right? This show is called Getting Ish Done every Tuesday with myself and Dr. Thunder. And in our various conversations, we have seen the general shape of these sins, and these sins take the shape of the lower things being prioritized over the higher things. And I've said over the past few weeks, hey, it's great to have a penis. There's nothing wrong with having a penis or a stomach, but it is when the penis and the stomach and the rest of the root chakra type stuff starts to obscure what is supposed to be higher. That's when it becomes a problem. We kept saying that. We kept assuming that we knew what we were talking about. And at some point, which started today now, we said we were going to talk about these higher things. And immediately we started saying, okay, there's got to be an order to them. We're talking about hierarchy, structure, order, priority, right? And we say that it is aligned with a certain kind of fulfillment. In other words, there's a whole dopaminergic, or, let's not use that word. Our biology kind of pushes us in a direction whereby we want to align our actions with the biggest goals that we have, right? And people like Jordan Peterson will kind of say, well, that's the spirit of God the Father, it's kind of 10,000 years of all that kind of stuff, right? The good as such. And as it would be the case most of the times, we find out that it's not so clear. It's still not so clear. But we can agree on what the lower things are, and we start to point ourselves up to the higher things. We then see that, okay, well, externalities such as whether or not you get the good from being good, whether or not you get the quote unquote happiness from being a good person, it's not going to necessarily, we have statistical truths that we can use as guideposts, if you will, but that's not really where it's at. But still, we say that this order, this logic, this internal consistency is important. So I'm going to go back there. I'm going to ask you, Dr. Thunder, and then K Polymath. Because K Polymath asked you before, and you said, yeah, there are these rules. So, right. Is the logos then the thing that we can say, okay, let's not try to abstract from it to say, okay, logos therefore, but is that one thing that are we agreed on that must be there? For something to be higher, it must have some kind of logical consistency and order to it.
Yeah, my tendency to identify with stuff, is always associated with a sort of logical consistency. So it appeals to me from it's persuasive, right? It appeals to me intellectually, and so yeah. I mean, I think that whatever that higher thing is, in order for it to grab my attention, it must have that core internal consistency, that explanatory power, that that ability to I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've already said it.
So, K Polymath, what about the logos here?
Well, yeah, as how she ate it. Yeah. So, because you said associated, anyways.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Oh my God. You're just
So,
you're a horrible person.
so, so,
This is
oh,
yeah. So,
that
if
root
we,
chakra. You can't. That root chakra is strong with this one.
it's associated together. You can't separate it.
oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah. So, yeah. If we invoke logos, I think logos is because I think there's a point where we made about the gravity still existing, but within the other laws, there are ones which are going to be stronger at each instances, like the laws of electromagnetism. How that's you can make something float in air if the magnet is strong enough, even though gravity is supposed to pull it down. So I do believe that the higher stuff is the logic, right? God speaking into existence, being and life, and all the stuff that kind of contribute to being. Things which are more almost immutable in existence itself, right? We are being, whether we want to or not. We are at this point, and whether you want to include time in it, whatever. But we are right now, and that is a higher thing. And if we focus on just even the beauty, the reverence of being itself, right? I'm a pretty happy person in general, right? And by happy I mean filled with fullness, right? And I think one of the aspects that I do focus on, what I believe is one of the higher things, is just being itself, just being like, when things go wrong, I know things will resolve themselves generally. And of course, I'm not an idiot. If I think something, requires more effort, I will go down that path to resolve it. But generally, I focus on being itself and just being happy.
Uh-huh. Okay, good. I like it because rather than say logos and rather than say consistency, one could say being, and as a matter of fact, be saying the same thing. The being, insofar as we can describe it, the very beginning, as you know, some people philosophically, metaphysically, you could call it your space, time, and causality. Those things are very structured and ordered insofar as we can even define them. There's a whole bunch of chaos going on, but the logos itself is written in the fabric of being in itself. So
Yep.
if being is good, then the logos is good, and that is perhaps the highest. We will come back next week and we're going to address from this point now, this being point, this point which is again the God point, which we stepped back from in order to understand what we're saying. And if we now go and say, okay, we can replace God with being and logos, maybe not directly replace it, but God is unnameable, unknowable, and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, generally, in a certain kind of way. Don't come for me with your theology, Dr. Thunder. But
Or chaos or reign, right?
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, if we're landing the plane now, I just wanted to plug a couple things. So yeah, I've got a show coming up on Thursday, this Thursday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's a Thunder's Thoughts with Dr. Doug, and the topic: will the 80-20 rule become the 90-10 rule due to the pandemic? And so that's going to be an interesting show. And we're going to be breaking down a Mumia Obsidian Ali video, which is going to be very interesting. It was actually, video was in response to a BGS question about, does the 80-20 rule exist? And so it's going to be very, very cool there. And then also, what is it? One other video also. So that's going to be a cool show. And then Ike and I actually are going to be doing a special edition of Thunder's Thoughts on Sunday at 4 p.m. I haven't decided the topic yet. We'll probably discuss that at some point, but I've got a couple topics that we can throw around. So that's going to be pretty cool. That's usually the space that the Case Closed show on Solo's channel is, but this, of course, will be on my channel. And then we'll be back on Tuesday with another Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. So it's been a very interesting conversation, and let's go.
Yes. Closing thoughts, K Polymath. And as I was saying, we will continue from this point next time going into being. But closing thoughts.
I don't close thoughts.
You open them up.
And let chaos reign.
All right. So that is it. And a last point on this community thing, because here's something that I've noticed. Generally speaking, there are way more people who acknowledge community than do not, right? There could be like 99 people in the room all talking about community, right? And how they need to do community stuff and how so on and so forth. But for some strange reason, they always want me to acknowledge community as though if I said it, everything's going to click and everything, like, oh, now it's all going to work. It's Ike that's holding us back, It's like, and it's not just me, right? I'm talking about the people whom are a definite minority. People who are like me are a minority.
Yeah. That makes sense, right?
Most people claim that they're all about this community stuff. But they point to the one guy in the corner, and that one guy is the guy holding them back.
But maybe they're right.
Think about it. Usually it's the opposite. Anyways, go ahead.
Right. But in an abstract way, maybe they're right. So put it this way. If most of them are community guys, and then you're one of the few who's adamantly not, community guy in the way that they see it, if they can convince you, right, then of course things will move forward in their little way, in their way that they're perceiving it, right?
But I agree with the comment on the screen here. They're actually not. They're neither really thinking for themselves, nor are they community people. Most people, as we know, are just unconscious sheep. That is the problem. It's not the problem of what they're focusing on. Is their inability to focus. They're not even awake. They are not even awake. So it's not,
they're
if
plugged
they were,
up to they got that plug in the back of their head still, right?
Yeah, 100%. So
they're not thinking.
And I'm not saying they're not thinking 100%. They're not thinking. They think they're thinking, but they're more or less just looking through a menu and celebrate, going through what has been pre-selected for them. Like, okay, I could choose this or I could choose this. Like, no, they're not trying to redraw a map. Imagine a new menu even. So this is the problem with people. It's not that, if they were to just focus, it's like these people cannot, it doesn't, nothing gonna happen. Okay. So let's end it on that beautiful note there about how people are mainly asleep, plugged up to the matrix, unable to think. And that indeed is the root problem, and not just, some kind of thing that you could focus them on. Focusing these uncharged, useless batteries is not going to lead to anything. Anyways, is it? Peace. We're out.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.